Welcome back, Podfic Listeners. This is Chapter 4 to Life is Rough, but I'm so fortunate to have met you. Enjoy. With Recovery Girl's assistance, and boy, was Izuku devastated when the boy heard he'd slept through the youthful heroine's visit. Izuku was completely healthy by the time Monday and school rolled around, and to Shota's and Hisashi's collective relief, the rest of the week seemed to fly by with no incidents whatsoever. Izuku didn't say anything concerning about his father, and the boy who seemed to be bullying him at school seemed to be laying off of it. Or at least, Kachan was laying off on the physical side. But Izuku hadn't seemed sad that week either. If anything, with each ramping day towards the child's birthday, Izuku became more and more eager. By the time Saturday morning rolled around, the boy was vibrating with excitement, jumping on the balls of his feet as he grabbed Teddy's leash and harness from the hallway closet of his own accord. "Come on, Mr. Zashi," Izuku trilled. "We're going to the park, all together." The child finished off his sentence with a noise that made him sound like a sentient, screeching kettle. Hisashi couldn't help but laugh. Shota may have still been in bed, but Hisashi couldn't bring himself to tell Izuku to quiet or calm down. Not when he hadn't seen the boy this excited since months earlier when Shota had finally bit the bullet and allowed Izuku to question him about his quirk. They'd found out that the child was an eager little quirk analyst then, as Izuku scribbled in as small a font as he could in a ratty notebook, trying to conserve pages for more analysis. "It's still only 9 in the morning, kiddo," Hisashi teased. "Although we could do brunch instead of lunch, if you're ready to go." "Yes!" Izuku all but shrieked, earning a loud groan from the bedroom. Hisashi chuckled, shaking his head as his husband slumped into the doorway, wearing his favorite pink sweatpants and a long-sleeved Put Your Hands Up radio t-shirt. "What time is it?" Shota slurred, as he stumbled into the kitchen, groping around the cabinets for a mug. He missed when he went to pour his coffee, and Izuku dutifully trotted over to the man and took over, making Shota's coffee for him while the hero glared at the spill on the counter. Hisashi rolled his eyes, because really, people said he was the dramatic one in their relationship, as he tossed a towel over to his husband for the mess to be cleaned up. Shota huffed and did so half-heartedly as Hisashi spoke. "It's time enough for you to be getting showered and ready, mister. We're having brunch today." "At the park," Izuku cheered, still vibrating in excitement and sloshing hot coffee around in the mug, somehow not spilling a drop, as he turned to Shota. "With Mr. Teddy, and you, and Mr. Zashi, and me, and—" Shota groaned, taking the mug from Izuku and downing it in a few meager gulps. "Kid, I love you, but please use your inside voice, at least until I'm on my second mug of coffee." Hisashi stilled, grateful that Izuku was facing somewhat away from him so that he could valiantly stare at the boy's reaction to Shota's words. Sure enough, Izuku had caught on to what Shota had missed in his sleep-addled state, and the child's ears and face were turning a hot red shade that clashed with his dark green hair. I... Izuku started, then made the same kettle-like noise from earlier as Shota slumped off to the bathroom to get ready. Hisashi quickly took pity on the boy, drawing Izuku's attention to the picnic basket that he'd dug out of their storage closet off to the side of the balcony. He'd had to dust it off and had shrieked loud enough to wake the neighbors when he'd seen a spider inside of it, but Shota had taken care of that. After changing out the lining of said basket with the fresh gingham print cloth, and no, it didn't look tacky, Shota, it looked cute. The basket was ready to be loaded up with foods. However, Hisashi had not yet asked Izuku what kind of food he would want for the picnic. Of course, the men had mentioned finger sandwiches and cake and such, and Izuku was surely an easy child to please, but Hisashi wanted this to be perfect. It wasn't every day that your child turned 9 after all. And oof, Hisashi had to bite the inside of his cheek at that thought. If Izuku could hardly take hearing Shota say that he loved the kid, then surely the boy wouldn't be able to stand hearing Hisashi's thoughts on parenting. Because that was what they were doing, right? It had been months, and they still hadn't seen hide nor hair of the ever-elusive Mr. Midoriya. Hisashi had a worrying theory going on that he had yet to share with his husband, but he knew that Shota was likely thinking the same. What with the man's extensive underground experiences, Shota had a kind of radar for trouble that Hisashi was jealous of. Rather than finding villains and criminals himself, trouble seemed to find Hisashi. But Shota seemed to have a freaking Doppler for villains and stray cats and problem children. All the sorts. That being said, Hisashi had eyes. He could observe that things were not right in the Midoriya household, if there was even a household to begin with. Quickly, Hisashi shook his head. Today was not a day for those thoughts. There would always be tomorrow to fix Izuku's situation, because today was a day for celebration and joy and laughter. He'd accept nothing else for his child. Instead of dwelling, Hisashi cleared his throat and asked, "What do you want for brunch, kiddo?" After making the finger sandwiches he'd planned for, Izuku had apparently been looking forward to those after all, and cutting up some fruit into nice little stars and rabbits, because Izuku reminded him of a bunny with the way the child was hopping around the kitchen excitedly, yammering on about the newest hero fight he'd seen on the news. Hisashi went to grab the cake from the fridge. He'd picked it up from the fancy bakery nearby his hero agency the day before, special ordering it a week in advance, flashing his hero ID unabashedly at the short timetable, because Izuku would have the perfect birthday, dammit, and had to beat away his husband's sticky little fingers when the man saw it, because who could have known that strawberry jam cake would be Shota's and Izuku's favorite. Izuku's eyes lit up at the little frosted flowers on the cake, and he made a noise of awe when Hisashi took the plastic cover off the tray. "We can't fit the whole cake in the basket," the man explained, "but we'll be sure to bring some of it. The rest you can have for dessert later on this week, okay, kiddo?" "Uh-huh," Izuku chirped back, nodding emphatically as Hisashi giggled. The child looked like a bobblehead, what with all of his excitement. A firm yet gentle hand on the top of the child's head stopped his nodding. Shota, having just emerged from the bathroom fully dressed, with his damp hair pulled into a low ponytail, rolled his eyes. "Stop that, Sprout. You'll give yourself whiplash." Turning to his husband, Shota gave Hisashi a peck on the cheek before looking back at Izuku. "You two ready?" "Just need to grab my shoes and jacket," Hisashi confirmed, sharing a knowing glance with his husband about the packages they'd lovingly wrapped and tucked away in their bedroom closet, away from where Izuku would be able to see them until the timing was right. "Be right back, and don't eat the cake yet, Sho." "I mean it, Shota." Shota turned to Izuku and rolled his eyes, throwing a thumb backwards at Hisashi as the voice hero went to grab his things. Izuku giggled, then began rambling once more, this time about some up-and-coming hero named Mirko that Shota had only briefly heard of, while Shota went about finishing packing some water bottles. Shortly thereafter, the trio, plus Teddy, began making their way towards the park. Shota held onto Teddy's leash while his husband took the admittedly heavier picnic basket, earning him a side-eye from his husband. Izuku, in a great show of stamina, skipped a little over halfway there, weaving in and out from between Hisashi's and Shota's slow-walking forms. Teddy was getting worked up at the boys' antics, making low boofs as Izuku giggled and pet the dog's ears before skipping off again. In fact, Hisashi was absolutely positive that Izuku was going to skip the entire way to the park. Or at least he was until Shota sighed heavily, handing Teddy's leash over and stepped forward easily to snatch Izuku out of thin air, tossing the child over his shoulders with ease that should have only come with practice. And yet, Shota looked like a complete natural, unable to hide his small smile for lack of capture scarf as Izuku clutched his hair, shrieking with mirthful giggles. Hisashi wished he had a free hand to take a picture, because with the sun shining, a gentle summer breeze blowing, and the two most important people in his life with him, how could this moment be anything but picture perfect? And then it happened. It had been Hisashi who suggested they go the long way, around the marketplace and through an alley. Sure, it would add a little bit to their walk, but the marketplace would be crowded and bustling at mid-morning on a Saturday, and so Shota had readily agreed, promising to keep an eye on Izuku for signs of tiring. But what with the boys' usual intensive workouts, Hisashi wasn't too worried, and the fact that the outskirts of the marketplace were usually desolate were comforting too. They wouldn't have to worry about Izuku running off into a crowd. With two pro heroes and a collective near 15 years of hero work between them, one would have thought they would be more careful. But Shouta was distracted with Izuku pulling on his hair, trying to hide his growing grin from the child as Izuku kicked at his chest, blabbering on about heroes again. Shouta had endured long and arduous patrols for the past 3 nights, and Hisashi knew his husband had hardly a full night's rest between the past 72 hours. Shouta was operable, but only barely, and his tiredness from being awoken early wasn't doing him any favors either. And Hisashi had Teddy and the picnic basket in hand, his focus solely on his doting husband and the kid who was quickly becoming theirs. With Eraserhead and Present Mike, it shouldn't have happened. But it did. Before either hero could react, 2 figures appeared in front of them, another 2 behind. All of the figures were dressed much too heavily and darkly for the summer heat, and Hisashi knew immediately that they were trying to hide weapons. "Wallets!" one of the men in front of them, a red-haired man with glowing yellow eyes, snapped. "And that pretty watch of yours, Blondie." Shouta had tensed up as soon as the 4 criminals appeared, his clutch on Izuku's legs turning painfully tight. Izuku wriggled, whimpering in fear, and Shouta forced himself to loosen his grip ever so slightly. Behind the hero, Teddy had tensed up and was growling at the snake-faced woman and the lion-maned man that had appeared behind them, his hackles raised. And for once in his life, Hisashi froze. He hadn't frozen in the face of danger since he was a child, all knobbly-limbed and rosy-cheeked, muzzled for his own good. But now, staring at his husband and child, noting the worry in Shota's eyes and the utter terror on Izuku's face, Hisashi couldn't help but hesitate. Only for a moment. It was just a single fucking moment. A moment too long, because the snake-faced woman hissed, and something about the noise set Teddy off. The dog rushed at her, clamping sharp canine teeth down on her wrist, and she shrieked. And then it happened. The red-haired man reached out for Izuku, and he must have had a telekinetic-type quirk, because the boy went flying right off Shota's shoulders. Shouting in anger, Shouta flashed his own quirk at the man, erasure forcing Izuku to drop to the ground with a painful thud halfway between the men. Shouta darted forward, reaching out for Izuku, and the 4th attacker made himself known by digging a knife into Shota's ribs. The underground hero gasped, a terrible gurgling noise that sent rage flowing through Hisashi's veins. Throwing down the basket in his hand, Hisashi roared, "No!" quirk in full effect as he aimed it over the huddled forms of his husband and child on the ground. The rippling effect had Izuku throwing his hands over his ears, crying out in pain and fear, but the brunt of the blast threw the attackers in front of them back by several yards. Whirling around, ready to take on the other 2 attackers, Hisashi found himself shocked when he saw the snake woman on the ground, still bleeding from her wrist and unconscious, and the lion-maned man tucking tail and running, already too far away for Hisashi to hit him with voice without causing some severe property damage. Teddy, a light spackling of blood on the dog's teeth, was looking quite pleased with himself as he darted past his blonde owner at lightning speeds, clamping his jaws onto the red-haired man's ankle and shaking. The man screamed, kicking at the dog, but Teddy held on tight. "Jesus Christ, that thing's a fucking demon," the dark-haired man shouted, only to be cut off by a strand of white capture weapon wrapping around his face and slamming him into concrete ground. "Shouta!" Hisashi cried out in relief, turning to his husband. The sight that greeted him was bewildering, because sure, Izuku was quickly becoming theirs, but Hisashi never thought he'd see his husband look so feral with the child tucked away in his arms. While one arm clasped Izuku to his hip, pressing the child into the alley wall, effectively hiding him behind Shota's own body, the other arm held firm to his capture weapon as he maneuvered the device to knock their dark-haired attacker unconscious. Hisashi quickly rushed to dispatch the red-haired thug, knocking him out with a not-so-kind kick to the head. Only then did Teddy release the man, limping over to where Shouta was half collapsed against Izuku and the brick wall. Immediately after, Shouta fell to one knee, his grip on his capture weapon going slack in favor of his hand rushing to the ever-growing dark spot on his right side. Shit, the man gurgled, blood rushing past his lips and trickling down his chin. Zashi, he groaned, and Hisashi only had a moment to rush forward and grab his husband's arm before Shouta fell completely. Glancing over his husband's bowed head, Hisashi felt his heart break when he saw Izuku's horrified, rapidly paling face. The child was crying, attempting to muffle his sobs with two tiny, shaking hands. "Izu, kiddo," Hisashi murmured, his free hand going to stroke Izuku's hair. The boy flinched violently, and Teddy whimpered, "Izu, sweetheart, are you hurt?" No," Izuku sobbed out quietly, still attempting to muffle himself as he shook his head side to side. But, Mr. Shouta is going to be fine, okay, sweetheart? I'm calling an ambulance now." Hisashi broke away from speaking with Izuku to do just that, quickly reeling off the street corner they were closest to before handing the phone to Izuku. "Kiddo, I need you to talk to the operator for me so they can trace our call, okay?" The trained operator would also hopefully be able to keep Izuku calm while Hisashi administered much-needed first aid to his husband. "Oh, okay." Izuku's voice wobbled as he took the phone, and Hisashi allowed the child's muffled, stammered one-word responses to the operator to wash over him as he turned to his husband. It wasn't good. Shouta had completely slumped to the ground, and the hand that had once been trying to apply pressure to his ribs was now slack. There was a growing dark stain that was already taking over half of Shota's torso, and when Hisashi went to press on it, Shouta didn't respond. For a heart-stopping moment, Hisashi couldn't tell if his husband was breathing, but then, holding his hand in front of Shota's mouth, Hisashi felt the slight puffs of air and sighed in relief. "Shit, Sho," Hisashi murmured to the other hero. "You just had to go and get yourself hurt, didn't you?" "Fuck off, Zashi," Shouta grumbled. Hisashi could have nearly cried with relieved laughter, but he had a job to do. He'd hesitated earlier, and it had cost him. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Even with his hearing aids in, Hisashi hadn't noticed the sound of an ambulance until one was right on them. He'd been too focused on trying to keep Shouta awake and Izuku calm, all while putting as much pressure on the wound as he dared to. The blood on his husband's lip and chin weren't promising, and what with the position the knife had slipped between his ribs in, Shouta likely had a punctured lung that was quickly filling with blood. 2 EMTs rushed to either side of Hisashi, and the man quickly reeled off the meager first aid he'd administered, along with the few stats he'd gathered on his husband's quickly declining health. The blonde EMT nodded, then attempted to shuffle in between Hisashi and his husband. Stiffening, Hisashi held his ground, gritting out, "I need to stay with him. I'm his husband." She. Shouta grunted, eyes glazed over as he strained to hold his head up and look at his husband. Sprout needs you. Take care. Sprout. "Okay, Sho," Hisashi muttered back, stroking a hand down his husband's cheek, valiantly ignoring the tint of red blood it left in its wake. I'll take care of Sprout, okay? So you just focus on being okay. Please, Sho." Shouta grunted back, and Hisashi finally stepped away from his husband's limp form, turning to look for Izuku. And Hisashi's heart couldn't have shattered into any more pieces, because Izuku was crouched between a dumpster and Teddy, curled up into a ball as he gripped the dog's wiry fur, sobbing into the tufts as he hid his face away from the world. "Zuku," Hisashi murmured, reaching a hand forward. Teddy snarled, hackles raising as he bared his teeth at his own owner, black eyes seemingly fixated on Hisashi's bloodied hand. "Teddy," Hisashi admonished in as gentle a voice as he could muster. "Teddy, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt him." "Mr. Teddy," Izuku sobbed, chest heaving as he struggled to breathe. "It's okay. It's Mr. Zashi." Something about the boy's voice seemed to relax the dog, even though Izuku's rapid breathing was worrying Hisashi, and the hero slowly moved to tug Izuku out from behind Teddy's form. Nestling the child into his side, Hisashi very carefully maneuvered the child's head to rest Izuku's cheek on his shoulder, face hidden away from any probability of seeing Shouta as he were. "Hey, sweetheart," Hisashi murmured, leaving a shaking kiss on the boy's forehead. "You're all right. You're okay. It's gonna be okay." "Mr. Shouta, he's gonna be fine, baby, I promise." But, the nice EMTs are gonna take him to the hospital, okay? And the doctors and the nurses there will take care of him." And then determinedly, "He's going to be fine, Izuku." Hisashi wasn't sure who he was trying to convince more, Izuku or himself. "Mr. Yamada," came a clear, sharp voice. Izuku flinched and the voice intoned again, much softer this time. "Mr. Yamada, can you please make a statement for us?" "Officer Sansa," Hisashi sighed in relief. Sansa was good with traumatized children, laying on his typically non-existent cat-like behaviors and qualities on thick to soothe them. And sure enough, when Sansa crouched next to Hisashi, he let out a small meow that had Izuku blinking in surprise. Then the boy's eyes lit up a fraction, his attention span being partially dragged away from the EMTs and Shouta not a few yards away. You're a human," Sansa offered with a gentle smile. "But I look very much like a cat, don't I?" "He looks like bastard, Mr. Hisashi." Hisashi spluttered, quickly wrangling words onto his tongue to explain to a chuckling Sansa that bastard was one of their cats. "I'm so sorry," Hisashi repeated for the third time, only stopping when Sansa held up a paw to quiet him. "It's fine," Sansa replied, his shoulders still shaking with a few remnants of laughter. "Let's get you and Izuku to the cruiser. I'll take your statements and then take you home." "Oh yeah, statements. Because they'd just been attacked. Assaulted. And here Hisashi was, chatting aimlessly about his fat tabby cat with Officer Sansa and Izuku while his husband was bleeding out in a dirty fucking alleyway. Hisashi could deck himself. Holding a hand to the back of Izuku's head, pressing the child's face into his neck once more, Hisashi stood and made his way over to the cruiser, Teddy on his heels, very helpfully snarling at Sansa the entire way, making Hisashi roll his eyes. A quick glance told him that the ambulance had already loaded Shouta up and was clearly about to take off, if the EMT slamming the door shut was any indication. Hisashi's heart lurched, his stomach churning, and the sudden need to be next to his husband, holding Shota's hand, kissing his forehead, cuddling up against his side. That urge overtook him for a moment. But then he noticed Izuku's bony knees digging into his side. He felt the child's warm breath on his collar, the shaking of the boy's hands as they burrowed into his jacket. Izuku was shivering, all for that he was coated in sweat, his dark green locks matted to his forehead. And, he was a dad now, or at least a parental figure, a mentor in the child's life in the absence of a real father. Hisashi owed it to Izuku and to Shouta to stay with their kid. And so, Hisashi gave Sansa his statement, piling Izuku and Teddy into the back of the officer's cruiser. Izuku hardly let go of Hisashi the entire time, only letting go of the man's bicep long enough to tug on his seatbelt. And even then, his hands had been shaking too much to click it into place, so Hisashi leaned forward and helped the child. Teddy curled up on Izuku's lap, and the boy hid his face in the dog's fur once more. Leaning an arm over the boy, Hisashi laid his cheek atop Izuku's head, closing his eyes in the silence of the car, trying to purge the blood-stained image of his dying husband from his mind. Jesus Christ, you guys. This chapter, I absolutely struggled with this chapter, with my emotions. You guys have no idea how many times I had to redo sentences and paragraphs just to get it right because of the emotion welling up in the back of my throat for wanting to cry for Izuku and Hisashi and Shouta and even Teddy. Like, they were supposed to have a fun day, and the fact that this happened on Izuku's 9th birthday, like, who has it out for toddler Izuku? I mean, he's not a toddler, but Who has it out for this child? Honestly, it's not fair. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. This chapter was, I think, the biggest chapter I've done so far on this channel that I recently created. I mean, the chapter itself, without including the intro and the outro that I'm doing, is 24 minutes. That's a big chapter. My throat hurts. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, but it was totally worth it. And if I'm remembering correctly, the next chapter does have a little bit more angst in it, just with Izuku, dealing with everything that happened, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. So you guys have that to look forward to. We'll cry together. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to listen to more. And definitely go click the link and leave a kudos and maybe leave a comment on there just so other readers can enjoy it as well. Well, enjoy your thoughts.